You would not believe how many people start a podcast with no understanding of what success means to them, what they want the day-to-day to look like, what they want the journey to look like, and where they want to end up. And unfortunately, that is a really, really, really hard place to start from, because unless you get lucky, it's almost impossible to hit a target that you don't know you're shooting at. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome to another episode. Today, for episode number 145, 5 questions to help you get more clarity. I know in the beginning of this journey, I really had no idea where I was going to end up. I was somebody who had a lot of naivete. I was ignorant in many, many ways, and I just wanted to podcast. And my thought was, well, eventually, I'll figure out what I'm doing. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad place to start, but I do think if I had a higher level of clarity sooner, we would be more successful today than we actually are. So today, I'm going to take you through 5 questions that you can ask yourself as a podcaster to get more clarity. Because at the end of the day, clarity is one of the most powerful things in the world. And now I feel very privileged to have a high level of clarity. But for the vast majority of this, I didn't. Now, did we have more clarity maybe than the average podcaster? I don't know. But it was far less than we actually needed in the grand scheme of things. So question number 1, what does success actually look like to you? Now again, success is personal. It's going to look something different to everybody. It's going to look like something different to one person as opposed to me, as opposed to you. For some people, they would look and see where I am today and say, that's what I aspire to. Awesome. Love it. Do I feel successful? Yes. Is that my definition of success? Maybe not, right? Maybe we're just getting started, and it's all personal, and I think it's all subjective. But I have worked with hundreds of podcasters who they either haven't sat down and decided what success means to them, or they don't have belief that they can actually get to a place that feels successful to them. So that could be a multifaceted question, I suppose, but simplest question to ask, not necessarily easiest answer to provide. What does success look like? For me, when I started this, I wanted to be able to wake up when I want, go to sleep when I want, podcast when I want, go to the gym when I want, interview amazing people, hang out with my friends and family when I wanted. I wanted to be my own boss. And now that is something that I have. Now, I don't get to wake up when I want and go to sleep when I want. That has actually changed a lot over the years, but you get the idea. That is something I had in the beginning. I remember when I recorded episode number 7 in 2018, I said that. I said, I want to wake up when I want to be my own boss. This is what I want to do. I had a very good idea in the beginning of what success would look like to me. And here's the interesting thing. The closer you get to your definition of success, the more or less you realize that's actually what you want. But we have to know what our core success is. What is the goal? What are we really aiming for? Are we aiming for a life that's easier? Are we aiming for a life that's more fulfilling? Is success interviews? Is it building a brand? Is it getting a certain guest on? Is it having a certain level of impact? All of those are okay. I know I talk a lot about monetization and making money and all that. If that's not your goal, if that's not what success looks like, awesome. That's great. I would rather you know that now than go try to get sponsorships or whatever and realize that it's not aligned. So that's number 1. What does success look like? Number 2 is very close to it, but we'll dig into why it's different. What do I want the day-to-day experience to look like? The reason I put this question on there is because oftentimes success and the day-to-day journey are kind of the polar opposites. So I want to be a full-time podcaster, but I want to have all the time in the world to do whatever I want. Those don't necessarily go together. Maybe 20 years in, sure, but I'm working more now than I ever have, and we're 8 years into this journey. I didn't understand that. Now, we're more successful, quote unquote, and the business is growing and we have more clients and all of that. Yes, that's all great. But if my definition of success was to work less and make more, the day-to-day would be incongruent with that because I work more than I ever have. Just something to be aware of. What do you want the day-to-day life to look like? And I think that's just a very important thing to sit with. I know a lot of people who they say, oh, I want to be where you guys are. And that's awesome. I hope you do get there. But it's going to be very hard to get to where we are and have the day-to-day just frolicking, fun, only doing what I feel like doing. Because that's just not the way it works. And that's definitely not how we've gotten here. So the only reason I put those two questions back to back is because I want you to define what success is, but I also want you to understand that the day-to-day journey is what's going to create your quote-unquote success. So we have to be very honest with ourselves. What type of day-to-day journey are we willing to experience? Are we willing to grind through? Whatever it is. All right, question number 3. This is one I never asked myself in the beginning. I wish I did, because it would have been very beneficial. What am I already good at? So that question could be, what am I already good at? What is something that I can take from a past job or experience? What is my natural skill set? Where are my natural inclinations? What am I naturally good at? What seems really easy to me that people always say is really hard? What do I get complimented on a lot? I know those don't necessarily convert directly to being a podcaster, but the thing that I'm really good at is taking messy action. So I'm a really good operator day to day. If you give me a list of 20 things to get done, I like doing that type of stuff. Where Alan, my business partner, likes to do long-term strategic things. We are a very good team because of that. I didn't realize that in the beginning. I didn't realize that was kind of my thing. I do a lot of stuff that's just very unscalable, and it's just day-to-day, very, very micro habits, I guess. But I like that, and I tend to be pretty good at that. That is something I was already good at the beginning of this. The other thing, too, the job I had before I was a full-time podcaster, I worked in an industry similar to construction, and it was long hours. I mean, I was crawling through attics in 120-degree weather. We were driving 6 hours to a job site, 10 hours to a job site, 12 hours to a job site. And sometimes I would drive an hour to an office. I would drive 6 hours to a job site. So I'm already 7 hours of work into the day, not including how long I've been up. Then we would work an 8-hour shift. And that was like fairly normal. So one of the things that I learned and I guess evolved as an attribute through that job was grit. And that's something that has really, really, really carried over. Yeah, 2 days ago, so we have a live event coming up, and it's just mayhem. There's so much going on right now. But 2 days ago, I was up at 6, doing my morning stuff, gym stuff, awesome. And Alan and I didn't finish recording our episode until 10:30 at night. And I worked the whole day. It sucked. I did not enjoy it, but I do have a skill set for that based on a lot of the past experiences I have. So you might have a superpower that you don't even realize based on an experience that you had long before podcasting that you might be able to use as a leverage point in some way, shape, or form. So that's the third question. What am I already good at? You could have a bonus question of what is my biggest weakness? I mean, that's probably good to know going in. If you hate social media as a podcaster, it's good to know that because now you can do things in a different way. Maybe you start scheduling content far earlier than somebody else would. Maybe you hire somebody quicker, whatever it is, right? So I guess that's question number 3 and maybe bonus question 4. Actual question 4. What are my core values and my core beliefs? So that might seem kind of like a woo-woo pie-in-the-sky thing. Kev, why does that matter? That should have nothing to do with podcasting. Core values are going to dictate who you have on as guests, the shows that you appear on, the content you talk. It's honestly maybe the most important thing. It just seems like it flies under the radar. I had somebody who said this to me the other day. They said, no offense, but the self-improvement, personal development industry is kind of like smoke and mirrors. And I said, that's fair. It is kind of. There's a lot of that. And I said, but that's one of the reasons that we're not, quote unquote, more successful because we don't play that game. That's against my core value of humility. That's against my core value of honesty. It just doesn't seem authentic to do that. I don't want to do that. If we didn't have that core value, we would have taken a bunch of different shortcuts, hypothetically. So that's something really, really to be aware of. Core beliefs. What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about success? What do you believe about the world? Do you believe you deserve to be successful without work? Do you believe that no matter how much work you do, you'll never feel successful? These are conscious and unconscious things. These are stuff that we talk about. These are the things that we talk about all the time with Next Level University. But I think it's super important to understand that.
Hello, my name is Dr. Tarryn McCarthy, and I'm host of the Business of Happiness podcast. When I met Kevin and Alan 2 years ago, I had no idea of how much impact they would have not only on the success for my business, but also on my life. They've given me enormous perspective and true strategies, true tactics to take in my everyday business plan and in my life plan to make an even greater success. Kevin and Alan, thank you so much. I couldn't even begin to express my gratitude for all you've done for me. And if you're looking for similar mentorship, I highly recommend these incredible experts at the Next Level University.
I don't want you to have an opportunity that's completely out of alignment for you from a core value or core belief perspective. Do it and then regret it. I don't want you to do that. Because when we're talking about success, we can pair in core values and core beliefs, because for most people, success, you have to be within alignment of your core values, your core beliefs, and your core aspirations, which are essentially your core goals. If any of those are in conflict, you're probably not going to feel successful. And again, we've had opportunities to do things that just aren't in alignment. Or we've had mentors that eventually became out of alignment and we stopped working with them. But if we didn't have the core values locked in, and that wasn't something that we had already decided on, there are certain guests that we would never have on no matter what. It's just their core values and my core values aren't aligned, and I don't want to bring them on. That's just the way it is. That's why I'm very picky. I'll be very picky with guests here. I don't know who I'm going to have on yet. I'm still working through that because I want to make sure that the message, the person meets the core values of this podcast and the brand. So it's one of the most important things, I would say, throughout, but also eventually, especially if you're building a business and a brand. All a brand really is core values and core beliefs. I mean, that's really what it is at the end of the day. So getting familiar with those early on, probably a valuable use of time, I would say. All right, cool. And then, just like examples, core values are humility, honesty, timeliness, patience, virtue. There's if you just search a list of core values, you'll see them. And then core beliefs, it's what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about the world? What do you believe about people? If you search list of core beliefs, there'll be a big one that comes up there. So whatever ones jump off the page, that's a cool level of clarity to have, especially early on as a podcaster. And number 5, this is maybe the most challenging one because you don't really know until you know. What am I willing to do differently to succeed? You could reframe this in a bunch of ways. What am I willing to sacrifice? What am I willing to prioritize? What am I willing to do more of? What am I willing to do less of? There's a list of questions that you could use interchangeably. But essentially, all this is asking is, what type of person am I willing to become in order to accomplish this thing? I've said this so many times, and I don't know if it lands or not. Having a podcast is great. Having results from the podcast is great. The thing that I think most people underappreciate is how much your podcast is going to change you as a person. And it's going to change you in great ways if you want it to. It can also change you in maybe negative ways if you don't have the core values and core beliefs. But what are you willing to do differently? Who are you willing to become to succeed with your podcast goals and your podcast dreams? I'm way different than I was 8 years ago in many, many, many ways. And in some ways, I never thought I would be. In the ways of consistency, I guess the best way to put it is, somebody asked me, they said, how do I get more done? I feel like I'm not being super consistent. And they said, I want to be consistent like you. And I said, well, I don't, maybe you do. I don't know. I think it looks good from the outside, but there are definitely some things that I've had to do differently. I said, I think one of the main issues is when you wake up in the morning, you go out and you make your partner and yourself breakfast and you watch a show. I said, brother, I mean this with so much love. You got to get after it sooner. I said, if you want to ask how I do it, I've been with my wife for coming up on 6 years. I can count probably on two hands the number of weekdays that we have had breakfast together. And it might be one hand, especially over the last couple years as things have really started. That is one of the things that I have to do differently in order to get to where I want to get to. Not everybody does, and I'm not saying that. But this person asked, from your perspective, what do I need to do differently? That's one right there. As a podcaster, your dream guest might only have a booking at 9 o'clock at night. Is that something you're willing to do? Are you willing to record a podcast episode Friday at 9 p.m. while everybody around you is going out and partying or whatever it is? That's a question for you to answer. And I think that's why the success question at the beginning is so important. I do believe you're going to have to suffer and sacrifice and struggle to the level of your goals. So my goals are very big. My challenge and the resistance will just be higher than average. Totally fine. Figuring out that for yourself is super important. I've missed a lot of stuff on this journey, and I don't regret it because I think now I understand pretty clearly what I need to do. But I spent a month living in Florida with Alan, and we were literally down there for Christmas, and I think we came home New Year's Day. There was no celebration for Christmas. There was no celebration for New Year's. It was just grinding. We worked really, really hard. And I remember I had a friend who said to me, dude, you're going to miss Christmas. And I said, brother, I'll never get another opportunity like this. There'll be another Christmas next year. That was something that I had to do differently. And it's been very, very beneficial. So again, this isn't a flex. I'm not telling you to do what I'm doing. I'm definitely not saying that. If anything, it's having an honest conversation with yourself of, how committed are you and how committed do you think you're going to have to be? Because those might be two different things. Maybe they're the same thing already. I don't know. That's going to be more of a personal question for you. But those are the 5. What does success look like? What do I want the day-to-day to look like? Do those clash? What am I already good at? And then potentially, what are my current weaknesses / bottlenecks that I can see? 4, what are my core values and core beliefs? And then 5, what am I willing to do differently to succeed? And you can ask yourself that for anything. If you're on a weight loss journey, what are you willing to do differently? Differently than your past, maybe differently than your present, differently than those people around you that aren't feeding into the dream. It's the same thing with this. This is a journey. This is an undertaking. This is something that you're committed to for the long haul. And if that's the case, you're most likely going to have to live a little differently to succeed. When I travel, I bring my stuff. All right? Oftentimes when I'm traveling, I bring my podcast stuff. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. That's a little bit different. Having to check a bag just so I can bring all my gear, that's different. It's a pain in the butt, but that is what I have to do. Again, that is not what I'm telling you to do, but we have to figure out what your own unique version of that is. So those are the 5 questions I would ask to bring a higher level of clarity. If you are out there right now and you are struggling with clarity, and maybe you don't know what success looks like. Maybe you don't know what you want the day-to-day. Maybe you don't know. I will have my link in the show notes for a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session, and we can literally go over these questions. I'm happy to give you a fully transparent, behind-the-scenes, what a day in the life actually looks like. If that's something you're interested in, I don't know if there's any value there, but I am always happy to do that. Whatever it is, questions, comments, concerns, getting clients, naming the podcast, rebranding, whatever it may be, I am happy to add value. And as I have been mentioning, there is another round of what we are calling the Next Level Podcast Accelerator starting on April 15th. So it is 12 calls over 3 months. So it's a call every week. And the first grouping of calls is focused on level up yourself. So kind of a lot what we talked about today about the core values and core beliefs, working from a self-improvement perspective, a personal development perspective. The middle portion is focused on podcasting. So how to understand your audience at a deeper level, how to name episodes better, all of that stuff, tactics and deeper understanding on podcasting specifically. And then the final third of it is focused on business. So how do you turn your podcast into a business and a brand? What are the fundamentals you need to know, tactics, that type of stuff? It ends up being $96.60, I believe, per month. If you use the discount code, you can just reach out to me if you want the discount code. And it ends up being less than $25 per call, which is wild. I mean, that is wildly affordable based on the amount of value you're going to get. And it's always the goal to over-deliver. So we'll have the link in the show notes for that as well. And also the link to the podcast breakthrough session. All right, cool. What do I hope? I hope you have an idea of what you want the end to look like. I hope you know the target that you're aiming at, because that kind of dictates everything. I know people say it's all about the journey. Sure, but the goal, the destination, the outcome you desire dictates the journey, right? If that wasn't the case, you just walk in circles. You're walking towards something. So I hope the journey's awesome, but I hope it's well designed and not by accident for each and every one of you. All right, until next week, keep on crushing it. Keep on podcasting, and I will talk to you all then.